I'll begin by stating what I think is fairly obvious, which is that things are changing quite quickly and not for the better. The pandemic has exposed the instability of our services-based employment structure and also the fragility of supply chains. The war, and in fact, all the recent wars going back 20 years, underscored the limits of military power. The outlook in the energy sector, which underpins just about everything else, is murky, and with it, the prospect for inflation. And the inflation that we're experiencing is largely driven by the rising cost of energy. What will happen going forward is, at the moment, extremely unclear. Climate change, as have already been said, is in fact underway, and how we respond to it and how effectively is an open question. With all of that said, I think it's fair to say that the core concepts that we use to think about these questions in economics, whether one starts with something as simple as supply and demand, or something as structured as our national income accounts or metrics of GDP, and also, for instance, productivity and that sort of thing, the so-called trade-off between inflation and employment, rules about the budget or about monetary policy. All of these things were framed in a different era. They were framed from the late 18th century through the middle of the 20th century. They all presume a basically self-contained national, or if you like, imperial economy. Sorry, Emma, should I be speaking more loudly? Okay, good. Sorry, I see at the end of baleful and materialist cares, and I thought, but I'm not projecting properly. Anyway, the idea is that there is an economy which either tends toward a state of balance and equilibrium, or at worst has a growth that can be managed by public policy, which is a lot of what we're engaged with here at the LBJ School. They also presume that the system is perhaps superior to any competing alternatives in the world, or at least if there is an alternative, that the two are independent of each other, that one does not really affect the other. And this was not an unreasonable assumption in the first Cold War. There are models that flatter a certain self-image, which I think was fair to say was originally British. It arises in the era of Victorian self-confidence of the British Empire, but it was even more effectively projected around the world by the United States after the Second World War. It's an image which is small r Republican, small d democratic, modern, industrial, and efficient. And the reality is, at the moment, something else. And I would say for practically my entire professional life, the conditions that enabled this self-image have been slipping away. There are many suitable words: globalization, financialization, militarism, imperialism, overreach, hubris are words that come to mind. The underlying economic process was well known to Adam Smith. It is specialization and the division of labor, which is in the global sense benign enough if you're talking about trade of one type of good for another, but becomes somewhat more ambiguous, difficult, when you're talking about the division of major economic functions. And in the world in which we have come to live over the past 40 or 50 years, the United States has reserved financial control through the dollar system, the use of the dollar as the international reserve, military control through bases, ships, bombers, and other pieces of equipment, and technological control, mainly through leadership in information technologies, communications, things that Will was just talking about. But resources and industry, by and large, have gone elsewhere. And with the loss of industry, infrastructure, and the engineering and mechanical prowess of the working population has eroded, and taking with them the long-term sustainability of advantages in the military sphere and increasingly in advanced technologies. So that's the present situation, I think, that we're facing as a result of the developments since really the late 1970s is probably a reasonable starting point.